The auctioneer's gavel crashed down like thunder, and Cordelia Ashworth felt her heart shatter with it. They sold to Mr. Beaumont for $300. The crowd of weathered farmers and merchants erupted in murmurs as she stood frozen on the wooden platform, her hands trembling despite her desperate attempt to appear dignified. From the back of the dusty auction yard, a stranger's piercing blue eyes locked onto hers through the haze of tobacco smoke and summer heat. Raven Blackthorne had drifted into Millhaven just that morning, his saddlebags heavy with enough coin to buy whatever caught his fancy. What caught his fancy now wasn't livestock or land, it was the fierce defiance blazing in the amber eyes of the young woman being sold like chattel. His voice cut through the celebration before Mr. Beaumont could claim his prize. Every head turned toward the dark-haired man in worn leather who stepped forward with the fluid grace of a predator. I'll pay $500. Beaumont's face purpled with rage. It is closed, stranger.
Odd if someone's willing to pay more than twice your offer.
Raven's hand rested casually on the gun at his hip, a gesture that sent whispers rippling through the crowd. Believe the lady's worth considerably more than $300. Cordelia's breath caught. She'd never seen this man before, yet something in his dangerous smile promised salvation and peril in equal measure. Younger brother Jasper lay dying of consumption in their cabin, and she'd made this desperate bargain to pay for the medicine. That might save him. But trading one master for another, was this truly rescue, or simply a prettier cage? The auctioneer glanced nervously between the two men. Beaumont was known for his cruelty to his workers, while this stranger radiated a lethal calm that made grown men step aside. Mr. Beaumont, do you wish to counter? Beaumont studied Raven's cold expression and apparently decided his pride wasn't worth his life. Keep her, drifter. She'll bring you nothing but trouble. As Raven counted out gold coins that gleamed like promises, Cordelia found herself walking toward him on unsteady legs. When their hands touched as he helped her down from the platform, electricity shot through her veins. His skin was scarred and calloused, speaking of violence and wandering, yet his touch was gentle as morning mist.
Why?
She whispered, afraid. To hope, because, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear, no one should be sold like property. And because you looked ready to fight your way off that platform with nothing but fury and fingernails. The crowd began to disperse, but Cordelia caught sight of her neighbor Mrs. Pemberton's disapproving scowl. By evening, all of Millhaven would know she'd been bought by a mysterious gunslinger. Her reputation would be in ruins, but Jasper would have his medicine. As Raven led her toward his midnight black stallion, she realized she'd traded the devil she knew for one she didn't. Yet when he offered her his coat against the evening chill, something deep in her chest began to thaw. Perhaps some devils wore the faces of angels. The ride to Raven's temporary camp outside town passed in tense silence, broken only by the rhythmic hoofbeats and Cordelia's racing thoughts. She clung to his lean waist, hyper-aware of the warmth radiating through his shirt and the way he moved with his horse like they were one creature. When they finally stopped beside a small creek shadowed by ancient oaks, she slid down before he could help her, needing distance to think clearly. You're wondering what I expect from you, he said, dismounting with fluid grace. It wasn't a question. Cordelia lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. Most men don't spend $500. On charity? A ghost of a smile played at his lips. Most men haven't spent the last 10 years watching people get ground down by those with more power and money. He began unsaddling his horse with practiced efficiency. I've got business in the Colorado Territory, silver mines and cattle ranches that need a particular kind of attention. You can come with me, or I can give you enough money to disappear wherever you choose. Just like that? Suspicion colored her voice. No conditions? One condition. His blue eyes turned serious. If you come with me, you pull your own weight. I don't coddle anyone, man or woman. The frontier doesn't care about your gentle upbringing, Cordelia almost laughed. Gentle upbringing? Mr. Blackthorne, I've been running my family's farm since I was 15. I can shoot, ride, and work harder than most men you'll meet. Her voice softened. But I can't leave. My brother Jasper is dying and he needs the medicine your money will buy. Something flickered across Raven's features, his understanding perhaps. Or recognition of familiar pain. Consumption. She nodded, throat tight. The doctor says there's a new treatment available in Denver, but it costs more than we could earn in 5 years. Denver's on my way to Colorado. He pulled supplies from his saddlebags with deliberate movements. Bring your brother. I know. People, they're real doctors, not just the butchers who pass for physicians in small towns. Hope flared in her chest, dangerous and bright. Why would you do that? You don't even know us. Raven was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief. I had a sister once, coughed herself to death in a mining camp while I was away, earning money for medicine that never came. He looked up at her, and she saw ghosts haunting his eyes. Maybe helping you will balance some scales. The vulnerability in his admission stole her breath. This wasn't the cold gunslinger who'd faced down Beaumont, but a man carrying his own wounds. I don't even know your real name, Raven Blackthorn. Is real enough? I've worn it for 8 years now, since the day I stopped being who I was before. He stood, moving closer until she could smell leather and sage on his skin. What matters is what we do going forward. When he reached out to touch her cheek, she didn't pull away. His thumb traced the track of a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're not alone anymore, Cordelia. Whatever comes next, we face it together. As if drawn by invisible threads, she found herself leaning into his touch. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and impossible decisions, but tonight, beside this creek under a canopy of stars, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. Wrapped in the promise of a dangerous man's protection, dawn broke gray and uncertain over Millhaven as Cordelia hurried through the morning mist toward her family's cabin. Raven had insisted on escorting her, riding silently beside her borrowed mare like a dark guardian angel. She'd barely slept, torn between desperate hope for Jasper and the intoxicating memory of Raven's thumb brushing away her tears. Cordelia? Jasper's voice was barely a whisper when she pushed through their cabin door. At 19, consumption had aged him to look decades older, his once bright green eyes now sunken in a face sharp with illness. I'm here. She knelt beside his cot, taking his fevered hand. And I've brought someone who's going to help us. Raven filled the doorway, his imposing frame made even more striking by the morning light. Jasper's eyes widened as he took in the stranger's guns and dangerous air. Cordelia, what have you done? What I had to. She helped him sit up, ignoring his weak protests. Mr. Blackthorn is taking us to Denver. There are doctors there who can help you. I can't travel, Jasper's words dissolved into a coughing fit that left flecks of blood on his lips. Raven stepped forward, studying the young man with surprising gentleness. I've seen worse cases make the journey. We'll take it slow. Stop. Frequently, he pulled a small bottle from his coat. This will help with the pain and breathing. A medicine man in Arizona traded it to me. Jasper accepted the bottle with shaking hands. Why would you help us? Cordelia, what price did you pay? Before she could answer, heavy footsteps thundered across their porch. The door burst open to reveal Sheriff Dalton, flanked by 3 deputies, their weapons drawn. Raven Blackthorn, you're under arrest for the murder of Clayton Morse in Abilene. Cordelia's blood turned to ice. Murder? Raven's expression didn't change, but his hands moved away from his guns in a gesture of surrender. Morse drew first, Sheriff. There were witnesses. Maybe so, but the judge in Abilene wants to hear your side in person. Dalton's eyes flicked. To Cordelia with obvious disapproval, Miss Ashworth, you'd best distance yourself from this man before his troubles become yours? No. The word left her lips before she could think. If you're arresting him, you'll have to arrest me too. Cordelia, both men said simultaneously. She stood, placing herself between Raven and the sheriff. He saved me from being sold to Beaumont. Whatever he did in Abilene, he's not a cold-blooded killer. Raven's voice was deadly quiet. How did... You know I was here, Dalton? The sheriff's uncomfortable expression told its own story. Beaumont's influence reached further than anyone suspected. Mr. Beaumont mentioned you might be trouble. Turns out he was right. Give me until sunset, Raven said. Let me get these people to safety, then I'll come with you willingly. Can't. Do it. Orders are to bring you in immediately. Cordelia felt her world crashing down. without Raven's protection and resources. Jasper would die in this cabin while she faced whatever revenge Beaumont planned. But as the deputies moved to restrain Raven, she noticed something. They missed the subtle hand signal he made toward the window. A whistle pierced the morning air. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Raven's black stallion came crashing through the cabin's side window in an explosion of glass and wood. In the confusion, Cordelia, Jasper's weak voice interrupted them. Both turned to find him struggling to sit up, his face flushed with fever. "I need to tell you something." She hurried to his side, pressing her palm to his burning forehead. "What is it?" "The night before the auction, Beaumont came to see me. He offered to pay for my treatment in exchange for—" Jasper's eyes filled with shame. "He wanted to marry you, Cordelia. Said if you agreed willingly, he'd make sure I got the best care." Raven was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to his. "Goon, that son of a—" "I told him no," Jasper continued quickly. "I said I'd rather die than see you trapped with him. But when you came home talking about selling yourself at auction, I realized you'd found your own way to the same sacrifice." Cordelia felt sick. "Jasper, you should have told me. I was trying to protect you from making an impossible choice. But maybe," he looked between them, hope flickering in his fevered eyes. "Maybe there's a third option now." Before anyone could respond, the sound of approaching horses shattered the night's peace. Raven was moving before the first hoofbeat faded, pulling Cordelia behind the shelter of fallen logs while motioning for silence. Through the darkness, they could see torches and hear men's voices calling orders. "Yo, Beaumont," Raven breathed, recognizing one of the voices. "He's brought a hunting party." They were trapped in the narrow canyon with nowhere to run. Jasper was too weak to travel fast, and their horses were exhausted from the hard journey. As the search party spread out to block all exits, Cordelia realized they'd reached the end of their flight. "There's a cave behind the waterfall," she whispered, remembering childhood explorations with her father. "We can hide there until they—" "Pass! They'll track us come morning," Raven replied grimly. "Then we make our stand here." She checked her rifle with steady hands. "I won't run anymore." Raven stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You realize what you're choosing? If we fight, there's no going back to your old life. My old life was watching my brother die while men like Beaumont controlled everything." She met his gaze steadily. "At least this way, we have each other." As the hunters drew closer, Raven pulled her against him for a fierce, desperate kiss that tasted of promises and goodbye. When they broke apart, she saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The standoff lasted until dawn, with Beaumont's men surrounding their position while Raven kept them at bay with precise warning shots. But as the sun crested the canyon walls, Cordelia saw the hopelessness of their situation. They were outnumbered 10-1, running low on ammunition, and Jasper's condition was worsening by the hour. "Blackthorn." Beaumont's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "Send out the girl, and we'll let you ride away." "It's like hell," Cordelia muttered. But Raven was already shaking his head. "Counteroffer, Beaumont," he called back. "You ride away now, and I won't put a bullet through your black heart." Laughter rippled through the hunting party. "You're in no position to make threats, Drifter. We can wait you out." That's when Jasper surprised them all. Despite his weakness, he'd managed to crawl to the edge of their shelter. Beaumont. His voice, though thin, carried clearly in the morning air. "I'll make you a deal." It's Jasper. "No." Cordelia hissed, but her brother continued. "My sister for my life. You wanted to marry her, take her now, and let Blackthorn go free. But I die here, with my boots on, rather than waste away in your custody." The canyon fell silent except for the whisper of wind through stone. Cordelia felt her world tilt as she realized what her brother was offering his own life as the ultimate sacrifice to ensure her freedom and Raven's escape. "That's not happening," Raven said quietly, but with absolute finality. "It's the only way," Jasper began. "No." Cordelia checked her rifle one more time, her hands steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. "We finish this together, or not at all." Beaumont's voice carried a note of cruel amusement. "Touching family devotion, I'm not interested in dying. Boys or stubborn women. I want what's mine, by right of purchase." I was never yours, Cordelia called back. And I never will be. Then you can all die together. The attack came at Beaumont's signal, a coordinated rush from three sides designed to overwhelm their position. But Raven had spent years surviving impossible odds, and Cordelia had grown up hunting in these very canyons. Their combined fire turned the narrow approaches into killing grounds, forcing the attackers to retreat with several wounded. In the sudden quiet that followed, a new voice rang out across the canyon. This is Marshal Kane, Territorial Authority. All parties will lay down arms immediately. Cordelia's heart leaped as she saw the blue uniforms of federal marshals emerging from concealment on the canyon rim. Relief flooded through her until she realized this might just mean different captors. Marshal Kane, Beaumont called, his voice now respectful. These outlaws have kidnapped a local woman and her brother. That's so. Kane's weathered face appeared above them, studying the scene with calculating eyes. Miss, you been kidnapped? No, Sir Cordelia replied firmly. I came willingly.
8.
And the shooting? Self-defense against men who would force me into unwanted marriage. Kane nodded slowly, then fixed Beaumont with a hard stare. Funny thing, Beaumont. Got a telegram from Abilene yesterday. Seems Clayton Morris was wanted for questioning in several assaults on young women. The judge ruled Blackthorn's killing was justified self-defense. The color drained from Beaumont's face as his legal justification crumbled. Now, Marshal, surely nothing. You led an armed posse against innocent citizens on federal land. That's vigilantism, and it's a hanging offense. Kane's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I suggest you and your boys ride out before I decide to press charges. As Beaumont's hunting party retreated in confusion and anger, Kane climbed down to their position. Blackthorn, you're free to go. But I'd suggest avoiding Millhaven for a while. Thank you, Marshal. Raven helped Jasper to his feet, supporting the young man's weight. We're headed to Denver anyway. Kane studied them with knowing eyes. Denver's a good place for fresh starts. Doc Patterson there has had remarkable success with consumption cases. As the federal marshals escorted them safely out of the canyon, Cordelia felt the last chains of her old life falling away. Whatever lay ahead in Denver, they would face it as a family chosen rather than born, forged in conflict rather than comfort, but stronger than any bond she'd known before. Denver, in 1887, was a city caught between frontier roughness and eastern sophistication, its streets bustling with miners, merchants, and dreamers, all chasing their fortunes. Dr. Patterson's clinic occupied a stately brick building near the center of town. Its modern equipment and clean facilities, a sharp contrast to the frontier medicine Cordelia had known. The treatment is promising, Dr. Patterson explained, after examining Jasper thoroughly. But it will take months, possibly a year. And the cost, ... He named a figure that made Cordelia's heart sink, despite Raven's earlier assurances. We'll manage, Raven said simply, but Cordelia could see the calculation in his eyes. Even his considerable resources wouldn't last forever at Denver prices. There might be another option, the doctor continued. I'm researching new treatments. But I need assistance people with steady hands and strong stomachs. The work pays well, and you'd be contributing to medical advancement. Cordelia felt a spark of interest. What kind of work? Helping with surgeries, mixing medicines, caring for patients? It's not traditional women's work, but then again, Denver isn't a traditional place. As they walked back to their hotel through streets golden with autumn sunlight, Cordelia felt possibility opening around her like flower petals. I want to do it, she told Raven. Not just for the money, but because I want to learn. It'll be dangerous work. You'll see things that will haunt your dreams. I've already seen my brother dying by inches. I've been shot at by hired killers, and lived as an outlaw. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. Raven, I'm not the same woman who stood on that auction platform. Something shifted in his expression, a recognition of the steel that hardship had forged in her spine. No, you're not. You're stronger. We're stronger. She reached for his hand, no longer caring who might see. But I need to know where this leads. Are we partners just until Jasper recovers? Or is this something more? Question hung between them like morning mist, fragile and vital. Raven was quiet for so long she wondered if she'd pushed too hard too fast. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of careful honesty. I've been drifting for 8 years, Cordelia. Right. Never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. Never letting anyone close enough to matter. He lifted their joined hands, studying their intertwined fingers. But watching you stand up to Beaumont, seeing you risk everything for your brother, you make me want to stop running. Then stop, she said simply. Denver's big enough for a man to reinvent himself. What was Raven Blackthorne before he became a gunslinger? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Believe it or not, I was studying to be a lawyer. Thought I could change the world with words instead of bullets. Maybe you still can. Denver needs good lawyers, especially ones who understand what it's like to be powerless. I spent the next hour walking the city streets, talking about possibilities and dreams with the easy intimacy of people who'd faced death together. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Cordelia realized she was happier than she'd been since childhood. That evening, in the quiet of Jasper's room at the clinic, her brother surprised her with his perceptiveness. "You love him," he said without preamble. "Is it that obvious? To someone who knows you?" Jasper's voice was stronger after his first treatment, though still fragile. "The question is, does he love you back?" Before she could answer, a soft knock interrupted them. Raven entered, carrying a small leather box, his expression unusually nervous. "Jasper, I wanted to ask your permission for something." Her brother's eyes widened with understanding. "You want to marry my sister? I want to offer her a choice," Raven corrected. "No more auctions, no more being sold or traded or bargained over, just a free woman choosing her own future." When he opened the box, revealing a simple gold band set with a modest but beautiful sapphire, Cordelia felt her breath catch. "It's not much, it's everything," she whispered, and meant it. As Raven slipped the ring onto her finger, Jasper smiled with genuine joy. "I guess this means I'm getting a brother-in-law who's handy with a gun," former gunslinger Raven corrected. With a grin, "I'm thinking of hanging up my weapons and picking up law books again." "Good," Cordelia said, kissing him softly, "because I plan to keep you too busy for gunfights." 1 year later, on a crisp October morning, Cordelia Blackthorne stood in the courtroom where her husband had just won his first case as Denver's newest attorney. She watched with pride as he shook hands with his client, a young woman whose property rights he'd successfully defended against a powerful mining company.
Oh.
Some things, she reflected, never changed. Raven still fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. "Mrs. Blackthorne?" Dr. Patterson approached with a smile that had become familiar over the months. "Your brother is asking for you." She found Jasper in the clinic's garden, no longer the skeletal figure from their desperate flight. Worked better than anyone dared hope, and though he would never be completely robust, he was alive and healthy enough to have started courting the pretty daughter of a local banker. "Look at you," he said, as she approached, glowing like a woman with a secret. Cordelia's hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. "How did you know?" "The same way I knew you loved him before you did." Jasper's grin was radiant. "Right. When? Are you going to tell Raven? Tonight?" "I thought I'd cook his favorite dinner and tell me what tonight." They turned to find Raven approaching through the garden, his lawyer's coat exchanged for the work shirt he wore when helping with clinic renovations. The sight of him still made her heart race, not with the desperate attraction of their outlaw days, but with the steady warmth of deep love and partnership. "That you're going to be a father," she said simply, watching his face transform with wonder. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around while Jasper laughed and other patients applauded from the clinic windows. When he finally set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I never thought, ... he began, then stopped, shaking his head. "A year ago, I was a drifter with nothing but ghosts for company. Now I have a wife I adore, a brother-in-law, who's become my best friend, work that matters, and a child on the way." "Don't forget the house," Cordelia reminded him, thinking of the modest but comfortable home they were building on the outskirts of Denver. It would have a garden for herbs and vegetables, a workshop where Raven could pursue his new hobby of furniture making, and plenty of room for the family they were starting. "The house is just walls and roof," he said, cupping her face in his hands. You're what made everything else home? As the sun set behind the mountains they'd once hidden, in his fugitives, Cordelia thought about the woman who'd stood on that auction platform 18 months ago. That frightened girl selling herself to save her brother could never have imagined this life, married to a man who cherished her strength rather than demanding her submission. Working alongside Denver's most progressive doctor, carrying a child, who would grow up free from the crushing poverty that had defined her own youth. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked, as they walked home together, Jasper having gone to call on his own sweetheart. The excitement of the outlaw life. Raven considered the question seriously. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. When you're running from the law, every decision is about survival. But this..." He gestured at the peaceful street, the lamplights, beginning to glow in windows, the ordinary magic of community and belonging. "This is harder and better at the same time. No regrets about giving up your guns?" "None." His smile held echoes of the dangerous man he'd been, but softened by the contentment he'd found. "Though I notice you still keep that rifle in perfect condition." "A woman needs to be prepared," she said primly, then laughed at his expression. "Don't worry, Counselor Blackthorn. I'm not planning to shoot any judges, because I'd hate to have to defend my pregnant wife on murder charges." As they reached their front door, Cordelia paused to look back at the path they'd traveled, literal and metaphorical. From that desperate auction platform to this moment of perfect happiness, every choice had led them here. The drifter had found her, but more importantly, she had found herself. Not a commodity to be sold or a burden to be carried, but a woman capable of love and strength in building something beautiful from the ashes of desperation. "Come inside, husband," she said, taking his hand. "Our future is waiting." And as they crossed the threshold together, Cordelia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had everything else together, unafraid and absolutely free.